Dead Code Diaries.
It was a rainy Sunday morning when Elliot Marrow, a quiet, solitary man in his mid-30s, ducked into Braxton's Book Nook, a small, crammed second-hand bookstore on the corner of Alder Street. The storm outside was relentless, and Elliot had nowhere to be. He often spent his weekends reading in silence, away from the buzzing world. Braxton's was run by a silent old man with thick glasses and skin that looked like ancient paper. The bell above the door jingled as Elliot entered, but the old man didn't even look up from his desk. Elliot wiped his wet shoes on the mat and began wandering the narrow aisles lined with mismatched shelves. In the very back, behind a curtain of dust motes, he found a leather-bound book with no title. The spine was worn, the edges curled like old parchment. The only markings were a name engraved in faded, bold leaf on the inside cover. E. Marrow. He froze. That was his name. Assuming it a coincidence, Elliot purchased the book for a few dollars. The old man slid it into a paper bag without a word and simply nodded once, as if in approval or warning. At home, the rain beat heavily on the windows. Elliot sat by the fireplace, a cup of coffee steaming by his side, and opened the book. The story began simply. A man named Elliot, who lived alone in a small apartment, preferred the company of books, and worked a mundane job at a law firm. As he read further, his confusion grew. Every detail matched his life exactly, down to the name of the coffee shop he visited every Wednesday and the neighbor's barking dog that kept him awake on weekends. But then he turned the page and things shifted. Elliot found an old book in a second-hand shop, its titleless spine hiding the terrible fate it recorded. As he read, he began to notice he wasn't alone in his apartment anymore. A figure, watching, waiting. His heart raced. He glanced around the room. Empty. He stood and checked the doors. Locked. Just a story, he told himself. But the book described things Elliot hadn't even realized had happened. The misplaced keys he found under the couch yesterday. The book said he didn't misplace them. The figure had moved them. He snapped the book shut and shoved it in a drawer. That night, he barely slept. For days, Elliot tried to avoid the book, but it called to him, not literally, but in a way that gnawed at his mind. On Thursday evening, unable to resist, he opened it again. He flipped to the middle, a chapter titled The Reflection. Elliot stood in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing his teeth. The lights flickered. He blinked, and for a split second, the reflection didn't move. He paused, reading the light again. Then, the bathroom light flickered. Goosebumps crept along his arms, swallowing his fear. He stood slowly and walked into the bathroom. The mirror greeted him as it always did. But then, he saw it. His reflection was smiling before he did. He screamed and stumbled backward, hitting the sink. The mirror was normal again. He slammed the bathroom door and didn't return that night. He resumed reading the next morning, needing to know what would happen. Elliot tried to get rid of the book, but it returned to him each time. He left it on the street, burned it, threw it in the river, yet by morning, it would be back, sitting on his kitchen table. With trembling hands, Elliot tossed the book in his fireplace and lit a match. It burned. The flames licked its pages, curling them to ash. He watched it disintegrate completely. He went to bed satisfied until morning. There it was, on the kitchen table. Not a mark on it. He opened it in a frenzy. The killer comes at 3 a.m. The sound of the closet door opening is the only warning. He wears Elliot's face, but not his eyes. Elliot checked the time. 2:37 a.m. He ran through the apartment, turning on every light. He grabbed a kitchen knife. He shoved a chair against the closet door and backed away. 2:59 a.m. Silence. Then, creak. The closet door opened on its own. The chair clattered to the floor, and a figure stepped out, identical to Elliot, but its eyes were solid black, like pools of ink. Elliot screamed and ran, but the figure was faster, moving with unnatural precision, its feet barely touching the ground. It tackled him to the floor. As the figure pressed the knife, his own knife, against Elliot's throat. It whispered in a voice that sounded exactly like his own. "You shouldn't have read ahead!" Elliot woke up, gasping. He was in bed. The book was gone. Morning sun peeked through the window. Had it all been a nightmare? He stood up shakily and walked to the kitchen. There, on the table, was a new book. Different cover, same leather, different title. The Reader. He opened it. The dedication read, "To those who seek truth in fiction, some books read you back. And beneath that, now that you've read this, you've started it, too." He slammed the book shut, then heard it, a creak from the hallway closet. The end? Not quite. Weeks later, another man, a college student named Nathan Wells, found a strange leather-bound book at a garage sale. No title. He opened the first page. The story began. Nathan Wells was a curious student who liked horror novels. One day, he bought a book he should never have opened. And in Braxton's bookstore, the old man smiled faintly behind the counter. The book is never finished. It's just passed on. Dr. Nathaniel Graves was a brilliant geneticist known in the scientific world for his pioneering work in gene resurrection and synthetic biology. His colleagues at the Eden Institute revered him not only for his intelligence, but for his devotion to his family. He had it all: a loving wife, Claire, and two beautiful children, Liam, 10, and Anna, 6. They were his world. But the world is cruel. The plane went down somewhere over the Atlantic, en route to a family vacation in Ireland. Mechanical failure, they said. No survivors. Nathaniel had stayed behind due to a conference. One moment, he was waving goodbye at the airport, and the next, he was identifying scorched teeth and DNA fragments. He unraveled. He vanished from the public eye, locking himself inside his estate just outside Boston, using the Eden Institute's vast resources to disappear. To the world, he was a grieving man. But Nathaniel had a plan, one that clawed itself into his mind from the moment he saw their charred remains. He would bring them back. The basement of his home became a cathedral of forbidden science. Here, Nathaniel pored over his years of research on regenerative DNA, cloning, and artificial memory implantation. With hair, blood, and tissue samples he'd secretly harvested, he began what no man should ever attempt. The first to return was Claire. Grown in a synthetic womb and aged in hypergrowth chambers, she emerged physically identical. But it wasn't just flesh he restored. Using neuromapped memories from family videos, journals, and advanced AI predictive modeling, he rebuilt her mind. She blinked at him from the pod and whispered his name. Then came Liam and Anna. Within 8 months, his family stood before him again. Laughing, hugging, crying. They remembered everything: their birthdays, the smell of pancakes on Sunday, the crash. But only as a bad dream, a nightmare they couldn't explain. At first, it was heaven. Nathaniel believed he had defeated death. Until the echoes began. The first incident was minor. Claire stared at the rain through the kitchen window for hours. When Nathaniel touched her shoulder, she didn't blink, just whispered, "We were underwater too long." Then came Liam. He crushed the family dog, Max, with his bare hands. When Nathaniel found him, Liam was crying, shaking, but calmly said, "I didn't mean to. I just wanted to see what it felt like to stop something from breathing." Anna's drawings changed. No longer flowers and bunnies, but spirals and black skies, with eyeless figures looming over people in beds. She said they were the Watchers, the ones she saw in the dark between lives. They spoke of dreams, voices whispering from beyond the pod, warning them that they didn't belong here, that something came with them. Claire's body began to change. Under her skin, something moved. Veins bulged like worms writhing under her flesh. She complained of a noise, a constant droning hum that no one else could hear. Nathaniel ran scans. Her DNA was degrading. The artificial memories were unraveling. Memories overlapped. One day, she'd forget their wedding. The next, she'd remember a night Nathaniel knew never happened. She accused him of letting them die again. One night, Nathaniel found her, slicing her belly open with a scalpel. "I had to see what's inside," she whispered, smiling. "But it's not me. It's not Claire. She's still at the bottom of the ocean." Liam became violent. He attacked a delivery man, nearly killed him. When restrained, he screamed in a voice too deep for a 10-year-old. "You stole this flesh. You are not God." Anna stopped sleeping. Her eyes turned completely black one morning, like ink had poured through her irises. When Nathaniel tried to hold her, she recoiled and whispered,
You pulled us from hell, and it followed.
The house was in chaos. Lights flickered. Mold spread from nowhere. Animals avoided the property. The walls dripped with moisture, as if the ocean were pressing in on all sides. Nathaniel's basement lab, once pristine, was now a madhouse. All the growth chambers were shattered. Something was growing in the walls, birthed from the failed clones. Twisted things that croaked and cried for their father. And then he heard it too. The hum, a chorus of dead voices just beneath the frequencies of life. One by one, they turned. Claire no longer spoke. She sang in reverse, bleeding from her eyes. Liam tore open the fridge and filled it with raw meat, mumbling prayers in tongues. Anna stood by the fireplace, smiling, whispering to someone only she could see. On the 7th night, they gathered in the living room. "We were never meant to come back," Claire said, in a voice not her own. "Now we are the gate." As they held hands, their bodies convulsed. Bones snapped, eyes rolled back, and then they opened the door. A tear in space shimmered behind them, black, wet, pulsing like a wound in the air. From it, they emerged, the Watchers, humanoid, tall, eyeless, faces stretched like wet cloth. They hissed as they walked through, whispering Nathaniel's name. He ran. The mansion was found weeks later. No bodies, no signs of Nathaniel, but there were rumors. Local kids said they saw the house breathe, lights in the windows, screams in the night. The Eden Institute disavowed any knowledge of his experiments, but buried in a safety deposit box, found by a former colleague, was a flash drive. It contained a final video diary. Nathaniel, haggard, wild-eyed, whispering,
"I thought I could bring them back, but I didn't bring them. I brought copies, hollow vessels, and something else slipped in. Death is not just a void, it's a prison, and I broke the door. Now they're free, and they're coming for all of us."
1 year later, a biotech startup called Neo Eden launched in Berlin, focused on cloning and memory transfers. Their lead scientist, a man named Dr. Nicholas Gray, with deep eyes and a charming smile. But those who work with him whisper he never blinks, and at night, they say he hums, a low, droning tune, like something deep beneath the waves. Darren Cole had never been a man of superstition. 38 years old, divorced, and working as a defense attorney in a mid-sized firm in Cleveland. He prided himself on logic, cold, hard reason, numbers, facts, evidence. Those were the bricks he built his world on. He lived alone in a modest condo downtown. His mornings were predictable. Coffee with 1 sugar, black suit, black tie, brisk walk to the office. On this particular Friday morning, nothing seemed off. He passed the flower shop, where he always nodded to the old vendor, bought his usual egg sandwich from the cart on 4th Street, and entered the rotating doors of the Weston and Kyle law firm. The receptionist, Melanie, greeted him with a strained smile. "Mr. Cole, you have a visitor waiting in your office." He frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone. "Did they give a name?" he asked. Melanie shook her head. "Just said it was urgent." Darren sighed and made his way up. When he opened the door to his office, the chair facing the window was turned away from him. Smoke curled from a cigarette resting on the edge of his ashtray. "Excuse me?" Darren stepped inside. The chair turned slowly, revealing a man in a dark green prison jumpsuit. His face was hollow, sunken, eyes black, with veins spidering through the whites. Darren's stomach dropped. "Mr. Cole?" the man rasped. "Do you remember me?" He did. It was Elias Granger, a death row inmate Darren had successfully defended 2 years ago. The man had been accused of a series of ritualistic murders involving children. Despite overwhelming circumstantial evidence, Darren had discredited the chain of custody on a key piece of forensic material and won the case. "Security will be here any minute," Darren snapped, backing toward the door. Elias grinned, revealing blackened gums. "I'm not really here, Darren." Darkness overtook Darren's vision. The last thing he heard was the sound of static, like an old TV switching channels. Darren woke to the sharp stench of burning metal and rust. He tried to move, but found his arms and legs bound tightly, a leather strap pressed across his forehead, holding him still. He was in an old, grimy execution chamber. Mold crawled across the tiled walls, and flickering fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air was thick and humid, tasting of mildew and something rotten. In front of him stood a wall-length mirror. Behind it, he could feel eyes. Then came the voice over an old intercom, staticky and cold. "Darren Cole, you are here to make your last confession." Panic swelled in his chest. "This is a mistake. I'm not. This is illegal." The intercom crackled. "You defended monsters. Now it's your turn to face judgment." Suddenly, a screen on the wall turned on. Footage began to play. Home videos, police interrogations, crime scene photos. Children, blood, screams. They were all his former clients. Men he had freed on technicalities. One by one, their crimes were shown in brutal detail. Darren watched, trembling as his courtroom tactics were played alongside the horrors that followed. Then, the next video played, one Darren didn't recognize. The screen showed himself asleep in his bed, unaware of the camera. The footage fast-forwarded, him brushing his teeth, showering, talking on the phone. It was surveillance, taken over weeks. The next scene made his stomach twist. The footage showed Darren at a party, clearly intoxicated. A woman stumbled with him into a car. She was laughing, but the next clip, her body was dragged into the woods, limp. Blood streaked the leaves. Darren's face turned toward the camera. But it wasn't quite him. His face was stretched into a smile too wide, his eyes hollow. "I didn't do this," he shouted. "That's not me. That's not—" The intercom responded, voice colder now. "Every sin has a shadow. You have let evil walk free in the name of the law. Now evil walks in you." The straps around his wrists tightened, cutting into his skin. Darren screamed as he felt something crawl under the skin of his arms, like centipedes burrowing. He thrashed, and a sharp electric jolt hit him. Not enough to kill, just enough to burn. A door opened on the far side of the chamber. Out stepped a row of figures, 12 of them. They're ghostly, pale, eyes black and empty. They circled the chair, silently staring. One stepped forward, a boy with no jaw. Blood dripped down his shirt. Darren sobbed. It showed not his reflection, but Elias Granger again. He was seated in Darren's spot. But this time, Elias smiled sweetly.
"You see, Darren, I didn't escape prison. I was executed last month. But the ones I served, they gave me a chance for one more trial."
He stood up in the reflection, though Darren couldn't move.
"You freed monsters, and that makes you their champion. And champions must fall."
The electric chair sparked. Just before the switch was pulled, the room twisted like a folding photograph. The children vanished. The chamber peeled away like burning wallpaper. Darren found himself in his office again. He gasped, standing, hands trembling. The ashtray was clean. No cigarette. No Elias. Everything was normal. Melanie buzzed in, asking about his lunch order. He couldn't speak. Sweat poured down his face. When he looked in the mirror, his eyes flickered black for a second, just like Elias. And on the back of his neck was a brand, shaped like a broken scale. Justice unbalanced. From that day, Darren changed. He quit his job. He stopped defending criminals. But strange things followed him. People he passed on the street would freeze, eyes turning black for a moment. Children cried when they looked at him. One morning, he woke up in his bed. A note was pinned to his chest. "One more soul. Then the chair is yours again." His reflection smiled back at him, even though he wasn't smiling. The question now is, whose soul will Darren Cole free next, and what price will he pay for it? Ethan Marlowe was a freelance crime journalist living in Portland. He was well known for his deep dives into cold cases and conspiracy theories. At 36, he was sharp, skeptical, and stubborn. That Tuesday morning had been unremarkable. Overcast sky, bitter coffee, and a half-finished article about a string of disappearances tied to an abandoned funeral home just outside the city. He'd received a strange email the night before from an anonymous sender. Subject line, "You're next, unless you know the truth." The message had no text, only an address, 417 Halberd Lane, the location of the now condemned Thorne and Sons funeral home, where 5 morticians had vanished without a trace in 1983. The police had dismissed it as urban legend. Ethan didn't. Curiosity beat caution. Ethan drove out that afternoon, camera in hand, notes on his phone, and a flashlight in his glove box. The place looked like it had been swallowed by the woods. Rotted steps, peeling sign, the front door barely hanging from its hinges. Inside was rot and silence, moldering pews, collapsed walls, and strange gouge marks along the wooden floors. He noticed a new coffin sitting upright in the viewing room. Unlike the rest of the place, this one looked pristine. Polished wood, brass handles, and a faint smell of lilies. He opened the lid. It was empty. That's when he heard the creak behind him. The last thing Ethan saw was a man wearing a black mortician suit and a porcelain mask, expressionless, raising a syringe. Ethan woke in total darkness. The air was damp, close, smelled like earth and decay. His hands hit satin. His legs were confined. Panic rose like bile. He banged his fists above him, screaming. The sound was muffled, enclosed. He realized where he was. In a coffin. Beside him, something shifted. Ethan froze, heart thundering. A moist thud against the side of his leg. He reached for his phone. Gone. His hand brushed cold flesh. He groped in the dark, fingers gliding over a bloated, stiff body. He recoiled, stifling a scream. The body was fresh, no decomposition stench. Whoever it was had been dead only a short time. He felt the throat slit. Then he heard it, a whisper, like breath pressed through a throat filled with water. "Ethan," he screamed. The coffin shook slightly. Then something gripped his wrist. He tried to pull away, but the dead hand was strong. Impossible. He kicked, elbowed, clawed, and the weight beside him shifted. A crack. Something dislocated in the corpse. A jaw popping open. A faint light suddenly flickered. The emergency flashlight embedded in the lid. It lit the coffin in dim red, just enough to reveal the corpse. A man in a funeral director's uniform. But his face, it was Ethan's, bloated, dead eyes staring into him.
I'm not the one who died.
A voice rasped from the corpse. The light flickered off. He woke again, this time not in a coffin, but sprawled on a metal slab. The morgue, blinding lights above him. A woman stood over him, nurse scrubs, surgical mask, smeared with blood.
Don't move,
She said.
they're listening.
Ethan stared.
You were almost taken.
She whispered.
They try to hollow you out, take your memories, your face, and leave the rest behind.
What the hell are you talking about?
They've done it for years. Morticians who made pacts. They bury you alive, then use your body like a costume. Your consciousness remains in the dark until you go mad or become one of them.
She pulled back the sheet beside him. Another body. His face. Fresh stitches across its chest. Its mouth sewn shut. Its hands contorted like claws.
You weren't the first,
She said.
and you won't be the last unless we end this.
The woman, who called herself Dr. Avery Sloan, led Ethan to the basement of the Thorne home. There were no blueprints for it, but it stretched deep. Stone tunnels lined with shelves of embalming tools, rusted urns, and hundreds of coffins stacked like archives. Each coffin had a nameplate. Each one was someone still missing. He found a label that read, Ethan Marlowe, Draft 2. Draft? He asked.
They try different versions of you.
Avery said.
Sometimes they get it wrong, so they bury the test runs.
Then the lights died. They came from the walls. Figures in black mortician garb. No eyes, just smooth flesh where a face should be. Their heads twitching, bones cracking as they stepped forward, dragging scalpels and bone saws. Ethan and Avery ran, turning corners into more tunnels. But the walls pulsed, alive, as if breathing. The air stank of formaldehyde and rot. Whispered voices echoed from all sides. He doesn't belong. Return the face. End the draft. They reached a vault room with a central embalming table, surrounded by jars. Each one held a human face. One of them looked like Avery. She backed away.
I died, didn't I?
She whispered, trembling. Before Ethan could answer, the masked mortician entered. Porcelain face cracked, voice smooth.
You were the perfect copy until your memories returned.
Avery turned to Ethan, realization dawning in her expression.
Ethan, what if you're the copy too? What if you never made it out?
Ethan panicked. He touched his face. It felt too smooth, too tight. He remembered waking in the coffin, but before that, nothing. Was he the draft? Was he the body with the throat slit? The mortician lifted its mask, revealing his own face stitched crudely onto something inhuman. Eyes, black, oily, mouth too wide. You are the hollow, Ethan. That's why you're still here. Avery screamed as hands dragged her into the dark. Ethan ran blindly through the maze of death, past coffins where his own face screamed back at him until he burst into the night. Police found him at dawn, raving on the road near Halberd Lane. He was taken in for observation. They found no evidence of any funeral home. The Thorn building had burned down in 1985. And Ethan Marlowe? He died in a car crash 1 year ago. Body identified by dental records. Cremated. Scattered. At sea. But now he walks the streets again, writing stories, sharing horrors. And sometimes, when you look into his eyes, you might catch a glimpse of something hollow behind them. Because sometimes the giraffes escape, and sometimes they write their own stories.
It began like any other Saturday. Claire Reynolds, 34, awoke to the gentle chirping of birds outside her bedroom window and the soft creak of the old farmhouse settling in the early morning sun. Her husband, Tom, usually made coffee by now, and their daughter, Emily, 8 years old and constantly buzzing with curiosity, would already be watching cartoons with their teenage son, Ben. Claire stretched lazily, yawning as she reached across the bed. Empty. "Tom?" she called, groggily. No answer. Shrugging it off, she slipped into her robe and padded downstairs. The old staircase groaned under her feet. The kitchen was dark. No coffee. No breakfast smells. No sounds. She wandered from room to room. No Tom. No Ben. No Emily. She checked every room in the house, her concern gradually turning to confusion, then to anxiety. The front door wouldn't open. She jiggled the knob, but it was nailed shut from the inside. So were the windows. Claire's breath caught in her throat as she stood in the living room. Each window was covered in rough wooden boards, nailed crosswise from the inside, as if someone wanted to keep her in. She raced to the back door. The same. Even the basement hatch was bolted tight. She screamed until her voice cracked. No answer. No phone signal. The landline was dead. The clock on the wall spun backward slowly, its ticking muffled and unnatural. Hours passed. She searched every corner of the house, frantic and sweating, calling her family's names until her throat burned. When she passed by the mirror in the hallway, she saw herself blink. Only her reflection didn't. That night, Claire tried to sleep in her bedroom, but the silence had teeth. Around midnight, a low knocking echoed through the walls, not at the doors, but inside them. She traced the sound to Ben's closet. Cautiously, she opened it. Nothing. But his clothes were wet, dripping, smelling of lake water. Ben had drowned in a lake once, when he was 4. They brought him back with CPR. She never forgot that day. She shut the closet quickly and backed away. When she turned around, her daughter Emily stood at the end of the hallway. "Emily?" she whispered. The child stared blankly, her mouth open as if mid-scream, except there was no sound. Her eyes were black holes, her skin pale, wet. Then she vanished. Over the next days or hours, she couldn't tell anymore. Claire's grip on reality unraveled. The TV played static, but once she saw Tom on the screen, blood running down his face, whispering something she couldn't hear. When she pressed her ear close, she only heard,
You were supposed to forget.
food in the fridge rotted in hours. The kitchen clock ticked faster every time she looked away. Footsteps followed her at night. Whispering came from the air vents. She scratched at the boarded windows until her fingers bled. Behind one, she thought she saw movement. A face watching her, smiling. One night, Claire stumbled across a door she didn't remember ever being there. Behind a bookcase in the study. Down the hidden staircase was a dim, concrete room with a single flickering light bulb. A projector played a loop of old home movies, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, summer picnics. But something was wrong. In every scene, Claire was smiling too widely, staring directly into the camera, while everyone else acted normal. She turned to the far wall, where something was painted in red across the brick. You wanted this. Suddenly, she remembered. Tom had taken the kids and left her 6 months ago after she had a breakdown. She'd gone off her medication, started talking about voices in the walls, about someone watching through mirrors. They'd begged her to get help. She refused. She dragged them back. She boarded the house herself. They tried to escape. She stopped them. A last memory hit her like a thunderclap, standing over their bodies in the kitchen. A hammer in her hand, blood everywhere. The house had been quiet ever since. But now it wanted her to remember. Now it played the past on repeat. It brought shadows of the ones she lost, but not to comfort her, to punish her, to feed on her guilt. On the 3rd week, or was it the 3rd year, she found the front door open, the boards gone. Outside, it was night, but the world looked wrong. The stars were too close. The trees leaned inward, like they were listening. She stepped out, and the door slammed shut behind her. The house was empty again, waiting. 3 months later, a real estate agent found the house untouched. Furniture in place, dishes in the sink, but no one had lived there in years. The Reynolds family had vanished in 2023. In the hallway mirror, though, if you stand just right and the light hits just so, you can still see Claire's face silently screaming. Trapped forever.
Nathan Mercer wasn't a brave man. At 35, he had a stable job in IT, a modest condo in Tampa, and no taste for adventure. The furthest he'd gone from home was a cruise trip with his girlfriend, Amanda, a birthday gift she insisted on. He hated the ocean. He hated crowds. But most of all, Nathan hated snakes. It wasn't just a fear. It was a phobia rooted deep in his childhood. At 8 years old, he had wandered into his grandfather's shed in Georgia and found a rattlesnake coiled around a pile of firewood. It struck him once, just a graze, but the pain, the hissing, and the cold, inhuman eyes never left his memory. So when Amanda surprised him with a 10-day Caribbean cruise aboard the Albatross Dream, Nathan forced a smile and swallowed his anxiety. He didn't want to seem weak. For the first few days, it went smoothly. Sunsets painted the horizon. Champagne bubbled. They danced under string lights and slept to the sound of waves. Then came the storm. It wasn't on the radar. The crew didn't see it coming. One moment they were sipping drinks on the top deck. The next, screaming passengers, crashing waves, power loss. The ship pitched sideways like a toy boat in a child's bathtub. Alarms wailed. Amanda clutched his arm, sobbing. They ran for the lifeboats, but were separated by the crowd and chaos. Nathan never saw her again. When he woke, coughing up seawater, he was face down on a pale, rocky shore. The sky was bruised gray. His head throbbed. Seaweed clung to his shirt. He was alone, or so he thought. The island stretched in all directions with jagged rocks, dense underbrush, and forested hills. He didn't dare pass. He turned and backed away, finding another path. But 20 minutes later, another snake blocked his trail, and another, and another. By the second day, Nathan knew something was horribly wrong. The island wasn't just inhabited by snakes. It was covered in them. Tree branches writhed with green coils. Rocks shimmered with copperheads. The grass rustled constantly, alive with hissing movement. The ground itself felt like it slithered beneath him. He tried to climb a tree to sleep, only to find it infested with vipers. He ran screaming, cutting his hands on branches. That night, he made a small fire. It flickered weakly. Dozens of gleaming eyes stared from the dark. He didn't sleep. On the third day, he found signs. He wasn't the only survivor. Footprints, a fire pit, an old rucksack. Then, a voice. "Hey, over here!" A man appeared from the brush, lean, sunburned, ragged beard. His name was Marcus Lane, a chef from the ship. With him were two more, Elena, a biologist, and Jared, a retired police officer. They had found each other days earlier. Like Nathan, they were survivors. And like Nathan, they were terrified.
We need to get off this island.
Elena whispered.
The snakes, they're not right. I've studied reptiles for 15 years. These things, they watch you. They follow you. And I haven't seen a single bird, a squirrel, even an insect in days.
The snakes ate them.
Jared grunted.
All of them.
They set up camp in a high, rocky outcrop, surrounded by smoke torches to ward off the reptiles. It gave them one night of uneasy rest. The next morning, Marcus was gone. They found a trail of blood leading down the rocks into the jungle. His screams had echoed through the trees just before dawn.
Something's hunting us.
Jared said, white-faced.
Not just snakes, something else.
They heard it that night, a deep, dragging sound, like a body moving, or a massive snake pulling something heavy. Elena swore she saw eyes in the trees, too high to be a snake, yellow, unblinking, desperate for answers. The three descended deeper into the jungle, toward a strange rock formation Elena spotted earlier. Black, monolithic stones arranged in a perfect circle. As they approached, they found symbols carved into them, spirals, forked tongues, serpents coiled around human skulls. In the center of the stone circle was a pit, and from the pit came chanting. They peered inside and saw something impossible. Humans, or what looked like them, pale and blind, their bodies tattooed with snakeskin patterns. They hissed as they prayed, arms outstretched to a massive, coiled shape at the bottom. It was a snake, but not a normal one. 30 feet long, milky white. Its head was vaguely humanoid, with sunken sockets and a stretched mouth. It was molting, but the skin it shed looked human. The chanting stopped. The heads turned. They had been seen. One. Jared didn't make it. He tripped over a root, and the pale people were on him in seconds, whispering and hissing, coiling their bodies around his limbs as the great snake opened its mouth. Nathan and Elena ran for hours until they collapsed from exhaustion. That night, Elena confessed the truth.
This island isn't on any map. It's not just a place. It's a temple, a living altar.
She believed the snake, the creature, was some ancient deity once worshipped by a vanished civilization. The survivors, the white-skinned ones, were its monks or its children.
It needs to feed.
She said, weeping.
That's why the shipwrecks happen. It calls them. It wants us here.
Nathan realized something then. The ship's path had changed just before the storm. The captain said it was a navigational error. But what if it wasn't? What if they were led here? Elena was taken the next night, dragged from her makeshift shelter, while Nathan could do nothing but watch, paralyzed, as snakes poured into the camp like water. Her screams echoed into silence. Alone now, Nathan fled to the beach, desperate, broken. But he saw something in the sand, washed up debris, a flare gun. With trembling hands, he fired it. A day passed, then two, then a helicopter. A rescue team, alerted by a passing freighter that spotted the flare. They lifted Nathan into the sky. He looked down one last time. The island was silent, peaceful. No snakes, no ruins, just green jungle and white beaches. But as the helicopter rose, Nathan saw it. The jungle canopy moved, shifted, like something massive was crawling just beneath the trees. Nathan was taken back to civilization. Doctors said he had suffered a breakdown, that there was no evidence of any island in that part of the ocean. No other survivors found. No records of a ship called Albatross Dream. He was dismissed as a trauma victim, delusional. But in his hospital room, as he looked out the window at the trees below, he saw something coiled around a branch. A snake. It looked up and winked. Then it smiled.